She was just doing her job, smiling politely, refilling glasses, and trying to make it through another long shift at one of the city's most exclusive restaurants. The kind of place where power dined with privilege. But that night, something felt different. When a billionaire CEO and his guests walked in, laughter turned sharp, and the room shifted. He spoke in Arabic, confident that no one around him would understand. His tone carried mockery, his words cutting deeper than he thought anyone could hear. Olivia froze, her heart pounding. Because she did understand every single word. But what he didn't know was that the woman he just insulted wasn't just another waitress, and that his callous cruelty would soon unravel a secret worth $500 million. What happens when arrogance meets truth? Stay with this story, because what came next didn't just expose a man, it exposed a system. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching this from? Olivia had learnt to stay invisible. Working double shifts at the upscale L'Etoile restaurant downtown wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and helped her mother back home. Every morning, she tied her hair neatly, ironed her uniform, and reminded herself to smile, because in places like this, being polite wasn't just part of the job, it was survival. To the wealthy customers, she was just another face carrying trays and clearing tables. But behind her calm voice and practiced smile, Olivia carried the weight of two worlds, one that demanded respect and another that refused to give it. She was fluent in 3 languages, including Arabic, a skill she rarely mentioned. It didn't fit the image most people had of a waitress like her. Her co-workers adored her quiet strength, her ability to handle rude customers without flinching. Management, though, saw her as replaceable, another uniform in motion. Still, Olivia believed that if she worked hard enough, maybe one day things would change. That night began like any other, polished silverware, crisp linens, and the low hum of laughter from men in tailored suits. She didn't know that among them was a man whose words would pierce through her silence, and that within hours, his arrogance would hand her the power to destroy everything he'd built. Dinner service at L'Etoile was always chaos wrapped in elegance, silver trays, champagne bottles popping, and quiet pressure behind every smile. Olivia moved through it all with practiced grace. But that evening, as the billionaire and his entourage settled into the private dining room, the atmosphere shifted. The laughter was sharper, the glances colder. She felt it before a single word was spoken. The CEO, Ethan, was one of those men who wore power like a second skin. His company controlled half the city's real estate. Every whisper around him was soaked in fear or admiration. When Olivia approached their table, he didn't even look at her, just waved his hand as if shooing away background noise. Then, as she poured his drink, he leaned toward his business partner and muttered something in Arabic. The men laughed quietly. A few guests looked confused. Olivia froze. She understood every word. He'd called her a stray pretending to belong in a palace. Her chest tightened. Years of keeping her head down suddenly felt like they were strangling her. Still, she smiled, finished pouring, and walked away. But inside, something cracked. Over the next hour, Ethan continued, making offhand jokes in Arabic every time she passed. Each insult hidden in plain sight, every smirk daring her to react. To everyone else, it looked like nothing, a rich man having dinner. But Olivia knew better. She felt every word like a blade pressed against her dignity. When the dinner ended, she slipped into the back office to catch her breath. That's when she saw something strange. Ethan's assistant had left a tablet on the counter, still unlocked, displaying an internal company document, numbers, names, and wire transfers. It was a financial report from his firm. Olivia didn't mean to look, but one figure caught her eye. $500 million moved through shell charities that didn't exist. Her heart pounded. It couldn't be real. But the evidence was right there, glowing on the screen. She took a quick photo before the assistant returned. That night, she couldn't sleep. His voice echoed in her head, those words of contempt. Yet now, she held something powerful, proof that the man who mocked her might not be untouchable after all. Days later, Ethan returned to the restaurant, unaware of what she'd seen. He ordered the same table, same arrogance. As Olivia served his meal, their eyes met. This time, she didn't look away. She'd already sent the photo to an investigative journalist friend from her community. What followed would expose corruption on a scale no one imagined. But at that moment, she stood inches from the man who'd insulted her, holding a calmness he couldn't understand. Ethan smiled, oblivious, and said something else in Arabic, another insult. But this time, she replied softly in the same language. His face drained of color. He realized she'd understood everything. The table went silent. And before the night was over, whispers would spread about the waitress who looked a billionaire in the eye and didn't blink. Because the story was no longer just about words, it was about power and how quickly it can shift when truth finally speaks. The story broke like a storm. Overnight, headlines exploded. Whistleblower exposes $500 million charity fraud. Anonymous sources pointed to leaked financial documents, implicating Ethan in massive corruption and money laundering. News anchors called it one of the biggest scandals of the decade. At L'Etoile, the atmosphere turned electric. Cameras lined the street, reporters shouting questions as Ethan arrived, trying to hold his composure. He demanded his usual table, as if pretending nothing had changed could erase the truth. But the staff whispered, the guests stared, and Olivia, calm as ever, walked out to serve him. He looked up at her, fury burning behind his fake smile. "You think you can humiliate me," he hissed under his breath. But this time, she didn't flinch. Because that morning, her journalist friend had confirmed it, the documents she photographed were real, and her statement had helped the investigation. The fraud wasn't just numbers. It was stolen charity money meant for housing displaced families, the same kind of families she'd grown up around. The injustice wasn't abstract anymore, it was personal. Ethan slammed his glass onto the table. "You'll regret this," he said, loud enough for others to hear. But Olivia didn't move. For years, she had swallowed her pride to survive in rooms like this. Now, the same people who once ignored her were watching him unravel. If you want to see more stories where the truth fights back, hit that subscribe button now. You won't want to miss what happens next. Moments later, two plainclothes investigators entered the restaurant. The silence was suffocating as they approached his table. "Mr. Ethan," one said quietly, "you need to come with us." The billionaire froze, then laughed, trying to sound unfazed. But when the badge flashed, his confidence cracked. The whispers grew louder. The same society that once applauded him now recoiled in disgust. Cameras outside caught every second of his exit. Olivia stood still, her hands trembling, not from fear, but release. For the first time, the imbalance shifted. The man who thought her voice didn't matter was silenced by the truth she uncovered. When the door closed behind him, the room exhaled. But inside her, something deeper stirred, not triumph, not revenge. Just the quiet realization that what happened that night wasn't just about money or power. It was about how easily cruelty hides behind privilege, and how one moment of courage can pull the mask away. Outside, the world now saw Ethan for who he truly was. Inside, Olivia walked back to the staff room, her steps steady, her eyes wet but proud. She'd been invisible for so long. But now, everyone had seen her. In the weeks that followed, the story dominated every screen. Ethan's empire collapsed under the weight of the investigation. His accounts were frozen, his partners vanished, and his name became a symbol of greed exposed. What the world didn't know was that it all began with a woman they'd once overlooked, a waitress whose silence had been mistaken for weakness. Olivia didn't chase fame. She didn't appear on talk shows or sign interviews. She returned to work quietly, because that's who she was. But people treated her differently now. Customers who once looked through her now looked at her. Some with admiration, others with guilt. Her coworkers stood a little taller too, as if her courage gave them permission to believe that their voices mattered. Still, Olivia knew the victory was complicated. She'd uncovered corruption, yes, but she also knew that for every Ethan exposed, there were dozens more hidden behind polished smiles and closed doors. Racism, arrogance, and inequality didn't crumble with one arrest. They lingered, systemic, quiet, learned. One evening, after closing, She sat alone near the empty tables and thought about everything that had happened. About how a moment of cruelty had turned into something so much larger. She didn't feel powerful or heroic, just human. And that was enough. Because this wasn't just a story about revenge. It was about recognition. About how one person's dignity, long denied, could shake the foundation of privilege. She thought about her mother, who once told her, "There will be days when they try to make you forget your worth. Don't let them." And now, looking at the reflection of the city lights through the restaurant window, Olivia smiled faintly. She hadn't. The scandal would fade from headlines. The money would be recovered. The world would move on. But something permanent had shifted, an invisible barrier cracked. Somewhere, someone watching her story would find the courage to speak up too. And maybe that's how change really begins. Not in grand speeches or protests alone, but in quiet acts of defiance. In the moments when someone refuses to stay silent in the face of cruelty. Olivia stood up, turned off the lights, and stepped outside into the cool night. For the first time, she didn't feel small walking past those glittering towers of power. Because she knew the truth, it only takes one voice to make the powerful listen. So ask yourself, how many voices like hers are still waiting to be heard? And when they finally speak, will the world be ready to listen?